Start color coding anything. Good evening and welcome to the Georgetown Middle High School School Building Committee meeting for May 28th, 2013. We have no public comment this evening. As this is the very first Georgetown Middle High School meeting, we have no minutes to approve, nor do we have any invoices at this time. We have not received any correspondence. Do we have any old business, Chuck, that you would like to mention about the middle high school project?
There is not. Carl's going to give us an update on progress so far and what's coming up. I think that's it, right?
All right, then, Carl, if you'd like to talk about the middle high school walkthrough and update?
Sure. There's two different things, actually. We visited the high school on two occasions since we last met. The first time was with Pat was there and our engineering consultants, Courtney and I, and Mike Anderson from facilities, and Peter accompanied us, just sort of to get updated on the condition of the building since we were last there. And some things had been done. You might have known there was a what's called an energy services agreement, ESCO, energy service contract, where they updated things like, in fact, these very light fixtures. They have them at the high school now, too. So they've already replaced virtually every light fixture in the school that used fluorescent lights. And they've done a few other things. So we got a record of those improvements, just so that we're up to date on existing conditions.
Was that part of the budget list that you were estimating?
Yeah, some of it
items?
was. Some of those things were. Lights were one of them. I'm trying to think if there was something else in the boiler room that might have been done too. Motor controls, I think, that were noted to be on the repair list.
So there was a certain budgeted amount.
Right.
So that kind of
That comes
comes
off the list.
off the list. Okay.
That's right, right. So that's why we were doing it, to get updated in that direction, but also if there are any new issues, like new roof leaks or new water problems, things like that. That there weren't any significant ones, I think, that we weren't aware of in that regard. There's continuing issues. It hasn't gone away. The water issues either in the roof or in the lower level. So those still, continue to be something to be addressed here in the renovation. There was also discussion about, because there's an appropriation too, to update the phone and intercom system. And since the work that we're identifying may not happen for a couple of years, because we have to wait till we essentially build the new Pembroke, take the sixth graders out, and then we can get to the things at the middle high school. But the intercom and phone system can't wait that long. They need to be addressed sooner, and so. But we did want to coordinate with what's going on both at Pembroke and the systems that make sure they'd be compatible and make sure they sort of made sense from the big town picture point of view. So we had a discussion in that regard as well.
So you discussing a system where it could almost be like an in-office call from one building to another?
Right, right. And in fact, there could be, if a fiber connection were made between the buildings and the high school were the hub, then just one phone system could handle all three schools, Pearlie High School. You wouldn't need to buy three phone systems, although these days it's basically three servers, three computers, but still, you could save and have one, as long as it was, large enough, robust enough to handle, the number of phone lines, extensions. One phone system could handle them all, and it would be like, calling a classroom in the high school would be the same as calling Pembroke or calling the superintendent's office in Pearlie.
Right. So are you going to stay on top of that? And do you work with Carol on that?
Yeah, we're coordinating with Mike. Mike Anderson's handling
okay.
that and procuring it, I believe, off the state bid list with funds that have been already appropriated and identified.
Great.
So that's another thing that won't have to be done as part of the project, in 2 or 3 years. And then the second meeting we had was just last week that Peter set up with his staff, where we could sort of in tag team fashion go through all the major departments starting with special ed and going through, art and music and science and library technology. So we went through basically to update programming information there. And we recorded, we haven't issued minutes yet, but we will shortly, to record, again, what's different than what we heard before, what's new, and relatively minor things. I guess the most significant changes were, as you might expect, in special ed, which sort of is a very, constantly evolving kind of subject matter depending on the population as it moves through the school. They were the one group that we heard, I think, that basically needed a little bit more space than we had identified previously. But we think we can accommodate that, partly because since we last talked there, home economics is no longer taught, and that space is freed up. And so there is more space available to be reallocated when the time comes, when the sixth grade moves out. So we think we can address that. We're going to work up some concepts run by Peter and special ed director and Carol, and make sure that we accommodate their needs. So that was the one significant change. Otherwise, things are basically similar to what we heard a year ago when we talked to folks and did those layouts to show how we could accommodate the needs at the time. So that's basically what we accomplished. And actually, prior to those meetings, we did have a conference call with MSBA too. I don't know if we mentioned that at the last meeting. To sort of kick off the middle high school
Right.
project. So we are on schedule with them. Then the next milestone for us really is to work with Carol and Peter and put together a so-called educational plan
Right.
and the space summary that goes with it. So that identifies, sort of a narrative of what the school teaches and how they teach, and then the sort of numerical quantification of what spaces are needed to do that, and a listing of all the spaces and how much square footage they need, as you've seen before. That's that big spreadsheet that we did for Pembroke too.
Seems so long ago.
We have to do one for the high school as well.
Yeah, we'll have to update that too on the business, on the, they call it a budget statement for educational objectives. And once you identify the ed plan, what is it you're going to teach and how you're going to teach it, you have to identify that the budget.
Right.
You have the budget to do that. We've already done this, so we just need to fine tune it.
Okay, George?
Yeah, was there some discussion on program and needs of maybe utilizing the Pearly to some extent if we needed?
We are counting on that, George, in that there's some special ed sort of central administration people who are currently housed in the high school
Right.
that will move to
Oh, just
Pearly.
administratively, okay.
And then we hope some storage needs too can be moved to Pearly as well to free up some space in the high school. Beyond that, I think those were the two main items, I think, that we identified that could move to Pearly out of the high school. But otherwise, we want to be careful to keep the programmatic needs of the high school at the high school. We don't want to get into a situation where certain kids have to, walk over to Pearly for their second block class or,
Right, well, there was
something
some
like that.
discussion back then about open campus type,
yeah.
but I don't think it went very far.
Yeah.
Carl, can you remind the public the connection or lack thereof with whatever site issues may be involved with the high school and what we're doing and not doing?
Yeah, we're, the town, as you know, has applied for a grant from FEMA to do some, I guess what FEMA would consider proactive work to prevent future flooding of the building, and because there are drainage issues, obviously, on the back side of the building where it kind of intersects the slope coming down the hill there. And that grant is in process. The last we knew, they had responded in a way that I guess suggested that Georgetown was still in the running for this round, and they had asked between Pearly and the high school, which is the higher priority. Maybe Mike knows better that what was exactly asked, and they responded to high school, but at least it made it sound like that things were still moving forward there, because it certainly needs to be addressed, and I'm sure MSBA is going to want it to be addressed simultaneously. So And right now, it's sort of outside of our scope. We're just sort of monitoring it to make sure it happens, but, you know, it's not our civil engineers or designers who are working on it, and it's on a parallel track, I guess you could say, Rob.
Thanks.
Yeah, I called our civil engineer who wrote the grant and asked him if he had any idea when we might hear about the awarding of the grant. And he thought it's gonna be delayed until at least the fall. I tried to confirm that with FEMA. I called them a couple weeks ago, but never got a response from them.
Who's the civil engineer we're using, Mike?
Oh, you had to ask. Well, I'll tell you later because I'll think of it then. It's midnight in Ireland right now. That's where my body is right now.
I'd rather hear stories about Ariel.
Yeah, I was gonna say, welcome back, I think.
Okay. Does that really affect this project if the grant doesn't come through until the fall?
Well, as I said, MSBA is gonna wanna make sure that the drainage gets addressed, you know, in one way or another, at the time that at least by the time the scope and budget agreement needs to be, you know, signed, which is, I think we have it targeted for January, is that right?
Okay.
I forget the overall schedule, but, and prior to that, I'm not sure what documentation they're gonna wanna see to, you know, make sure that it's proceeding.
So in brief, could you just tell us what our target times are with this?
Chuck's got the schedule right there.
Point at me now.
There you go.
Project scope and budget, we have in December, our conference in December, final MSBA board approval in end of January in 2014.
So we, for that, need the whole educational plan done.
Well, we
Well,
actually,
that's an earlier submission,
we actually have to
Okay.
make that
That's
submission.
this summer.
but
That's the
in
summer one?
August for
Yep.
a end of September board meeting.
August, okay.
And that's the final approval to move in the schematics, which is when we really define
Right.
what the project is and
What
what we're
they've-
moving forward with.
What they've done for us for this project, because they recognize it's not quite the same as other feasibility studies, is they've allowed us to combine the educational plan
Yes.
with the preferred alternative. They know it's sort of one and the same, that the preferred alternative is to, you know, renovate the building. And so we can identify the scope at the same time that we get the educational plan and space summary approved. So that's one submission that happens this summer. And then there's another submission in the fall or December,
In December.
I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Well-
we'll do the estimates in November, have them ready for the December submission, scope and budget conference, and then good final board approval at the beginning of next year.
So if I'm not mistaken, we submitted this application in the fall. I mean, I would like to think it's not gonna take them more than a year.
The FEMA application, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
They keep coming out with new rounds of money, but they haven't awarded.
The
There's a
old
lot of
one.
tornadoes and storms in the world.
That's what
that-
they're-
I know,
Yeah, the
FEMA's
latest
gotta
one was-
handle
flooding,
They
really.
just came out with Sandy money.
Right.
yeah,
And then you got Congress.
all right. So we just have to keep our fingers crossed
Mhm.
for that. All right. Is there anything else?
That's basically it. We're gonna have a follow-up meeting. As I said, we need to generate some options on the sped, additional space, and take a first pass at the educational plan with Carol and Peter, and then check back in with the administration on those revised layouts. So we're targeting a meeting, I think, in about 2-3 weeks. I think.
In June, I had a
So
note from Pat
before
Lewis.
school gets out, so like June 18th.
That's what I have
Something like
scheduled,
that.
according to Pat.
Yeah.
And then June 18th, you also have a committee meeting that night too, so we'll provide you an update based on all that.
Right. Okay.
And then in future meetings in July, we'll have to really start to talk about and debate the scope of work and make sure we've settled the scope of work so that the committee finally approves it. So in June, I'm sure you'll have
Yeah.
a submission on to everybody to review, to see what's been discussed. You'll have the month to review it. We'll come back in July, discuss it, and with any hopes we take a vote in July, so we're ready to fine tune what we have to fine tune to make the submission in August.
Can you,
One
if,
thing-
if you already haven't, can you send me a PDF or send Carol a PDF of the schedule
It was in the last month report, the one I submitted last month.
as a PDF document that
Yep.
they could take and plug into
Mhm.
something? Okay, great. Okay, great.
One other thing, Ellie, just, it's probably not a surprise to
I can
anyone,
send
but
it again if you need it.
just in
Fine.
talking to folks again and in, you know, listening to their wishes as opposed to their needs sometimes, it's gonna be clear that as the scope and budget develops, there's gonna be a list of things we really have to do.
Wants and
then
needs.
things that might be nice to do and things,
Right.
you know, I don't know what the third category is. But there's gonna be a couple categories that
Right.
we're collectively gonna need to make some decisions on as we move forward. So, just to let you know that's coming.
Yeah, I think we are all expecting that.
Right. As I say, I don't think it'll be a surprise to anyone.
Yeah, with the 2 meetings in July, in order to make a submission, that's when we'll have to do it.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So quorums might be tough because it's vacations and
Yeah,
all
well,
that.
we already have our July meeting scheduled for the 9th
And the
and the 30th.
Those would be perfect, right?
Yep.
Should fit
So
right
that
in.
gives people plenty of time to weigh in
Mhm.
on vacation plans or to work around them if they so choose. All right, is there any other business for the Georgetown Middle High School? Then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. The school building committee meeting for the Georgetown Middle High School is closed.
In record time.
Yeah, we're 7.
Easter.
Good evening, and welcome to the Pembroke School Building Committee meeting for May 28th, 2013. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We have no public comments this evening. We don't have a quorum yet, so we'll come back to approval of the minutes, and there are no invoices this evening and no correspondence. Chuck, do you have any old business that you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, just to give you an update on some things. The final the final review of the 60% submission was completed. The submission was made to the MSBA. We have not gotten any comments back yet, which is fine. We're right on schedule. So that had been made. The 60% set that was submitted included the documents, our review, the value engineering work, potential value engineering work, as well as the cost estimates, and we reported to you at your last meeting that budgets were right on target, which was very good news for all of us. What else did we do? Mike has requested some prices from a couple of, we're calling them quote-unquote peer reviewers for that additional planning board work. We don't have any pricing as of yet, I understand.
No.
And one of the names I gave him actually was already working on a project that had a mind block, so I apologize for that one, so I'll give him another one. We'll get a quote from somebody else who I talked to today that might be interested in the work. So I'll pass that on to him tomorrow. So that's out there for pricing, which is good. Carl will address any information regarding the zoning board, building permits, and all of that. Conservation Commission. And the pre-qualification work we finalized with town council in Mike's absence. Your legal counsel was very helpful, very easy to work with. And I promise I did not take up a lot of his time. He did not run up your bills, because he had seen the documents before, and I've prepared them a couple of times before, so they went very smooth. And they're all being distributed as we speak. A number of people have picked it up. I'm not nervous yet, but there's not a lot of GCs on the list, so we'll start burning the phone lines to tell people that it's out there. I think we hit the holidays, and a lot of people took a lot of time off last week. So this week they'll be into it. But this stuff is very standard stuff that everybody prepares and will submit. General contractors and subs, a lot of interest, a lot of people. It's the usual list of everybody we've seen before, which is good. But there's interest on the street. Everywhere I go, everybody's asking about it. So that's good news. We want more in the marketplace. It'll help our numbers. And really, that's about it. I have some propay information to do with accounting. We've found some shortfalls that the MSBA is going to reimburse us some additional money for some things they disallowed at the beginning. We're going to resubmit it and get that money back, which is good news. It's not a lot, but it's something.
Every little bit helps.
So that's right. So really, that's the old stuff. That's an update on all the old stuff. Carl can talk, like he said, about conservation. It's on here already. So recap of those things. We'll go there. That's it.
All right, anyone have any questions about any of that old business?
I don't know if this is old business or not, but just the ongoing review of the site plan.
Such
That's
as?
the peer review that's checked.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
the
it's-
peer review and just
Right,
that
and
there are
that's-
still some questions about it.
I
that-
forwarded your questions
Yeah,
on to
and
Courtney.
not to get into those tonight, but
Yeah.
I didn't know if since it was old business, if we wanted to just mention that now.
Why don't you wait till you get your response back from Courtney and see, based
Okay.
on her answers,
All right, then we'll-
what you have left. And I did look at your list, and like you said, there are a lot of things that we're gonna wait to hear back from the peer review.
Yeah,
And then we're definitely gonna have conversations about those.
okay.
So, okay. All right, Carl, then, wanna talk to us about the, what would you like to start with, the update?
If you want to go in order here, yeah, what we're
Sure.
currently working on now, the next milestone is
The 90?
90% drawings, which are at the end of June, go in, but in order to get the cost estimate done in time, we're getting those documents to cost estimators shortly here, so that, they have enough time to do their work again, and include everything as up to date as we can get it by that time. So that's basically the next milestone. We need to time it with, as Chuck said, getting the comments back from MSBA first on the previous submittal, responding to those before we can finalize 90%. But MSBA has generally been pretty good about and timely about getting their comments to us. So we're not concerned about that at this point.
Carl, excuse me for interrupting. How do the peer reviews fit or not fit into that schedule? If they were to require some,
Well, this is why we were getting them out previously to get quotes in so that they could respond
by
in a
December?
timely fashion, right, to be included as part of this submission, or reacted to at least by this submission. Yep. Otherwise, for MSBA's purposes, the peer review isn't relevant. It's just for your own purposes. But they want to know that the structural peer review, which we'll talk about later, that's underway.
Right.
And that they'll want to know the status of permitting, like conservation and zoning too. But they don't necessarily have to be completed by the time to make the 90% submission. We just have to report on the status.
There's
of
actually a chart that gets
And it
submitted that
doesn't.
requires them, that we require to
Right.
list dates of when applications were made,
And
when
somehow-
hearings have been made, and when we think that the final determinations for any of those meetings will be done.
Okay, and somehow the cost issue is all wrapped up in that and addressed, and if there are changes that come from peer
Correct.
review, it doesn't.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, I mean, we have to be
That's
sort
all.
of smart about making allowances if we think there are going to be any changes that aren't in the
Correct.
documents at this
We
point.
don't want to do that as much
Yeah.
as we can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, George?
So do we have to go in front of zoning, you said?
Yes, yeah, I'll get to that. I don't know, the recap of the building inspector meeting. We did sit down with John, the building inspector, to review the status of the plans now that they're, fairly far along here. We have a code review that we've done of the building code. And when we went through the building inspector is also the zoning enforcement officer. His interpretation was that he understands the Dover Amendment and the quote-unquote reasonable dimensional requirement aspect of it, and his feeling is that the proper way to handle that is to go through the zoning board of appeals for the two issues that he considers need the variance is the number of stories, which we are at 3 stories in a underlying district that allows 2.5 stories, and we're at somewhere between 45 and 50 feet tall for the building in an underlying zone that allows, I think it's 35 feet tall. So, and that's not unusual. We've been in other districts where sometimes the building inspector by himself will review those issues and say he has the jurisdiction to grant those, but in many others they say, well, we'd like to sort of go through the formality of going through the zoning board of appeals. That's what they're there for. So and to do that, again, the technical way that works is you apply for a building permit, you get rejected for not meeting, and he cites the specific sections, and then it goes to the zoning board. They can't act on it until you've been rejected, so they know exactly what things you're seeking relief on. So even though the drawings aren't 100%, we technically have to file a building permit. In fact, we have the application already filled out here. Even though, like I say, it's a little bit out of sequence in that there's no contractor yet. And a building permit asks for the contractor's building license and things like that, and the drawings aren't 100% otherwise. But it's understood, and as I say, it's a part of the normal process that when a variance is needed for zoning issues, that you go through that sequence. So we will file. It's an abbreviated set of plans, just a site plan and a layout plan and overall floor plans and building elevations, along with the building permit.
Do we trigger for the Water Resource District, or is that?
He didn't.
Exempted?
Yeah, that's exempt. He didn't bring that up or feel we had to do that. So, one thing we do in that regard to the permit application, as I said, we've filled it out and it's ready to go otherwise, but there is a signature block for the quote-unquote owner. And I don't know how you want to handle that on a public building. Sometimes it's chair of the building committee, sometimes it's the town administrator, sometimes it's the chair of the selectmen, but in any event, somebody needs to sign,
We all put in our fingers at
so.
I know, I put it that way, you put it
Dave
that
Services.
way.
Here's what we did. One of these says Ellie Sinkowitz, one of these says David Surface, one of these says Mike Farrell. So we're prepared, whichever way you want to go
Yeah.
tonight, there's one of these that you could
You
sign.
missed the school committee
It
meeting.
probably
Yeah.
makes sense to have Mike sign it. Do you agree?
No, I don't, unfortunately. I feel the school building committee is the one to
All right.
apply.
Okay, that's fine.
And you or Michelle as chair could be
That's
the
fine.
owner applicant.
I know Dave signed the Concom.
He has to sign as the CEO of the town, but since he's not gonna be on the committee any longer,
Oh.
I think it'd be good to just have the chairs sign things now going forward.
That's fine. I'll see you after the meeting and
Okay,
Carl, what were the two ZBA issues, building height and what?
number of stories.
Okay.
We have 3 stories in a underlying district that allows. And again, you know, I want to be clear, we don't think we're in violation of the zoning. It's a process
Understand.
so applying the underlying zoning, it's a little misleading. It's not as though we're in violation necessarily, but it is a process to go through.
Carl, if I may, there is an outside chance we may not have to go to the ZBA. John is talking with legal counsel, and
Okay,
after that conversation happens, then John will make his final decision.
okay. As I said, I've seen it both ways,
Yeah.
yeah. And as part of this too, if it does go that way, the town, you know, for other projects, assesses fees for applying for variances. And oftentimes in a public process, the selectmen will waive the fee. I don't know if that's something you want to consider. I forgot to bring the chart with me, but there is a chart.
It's a pretty significant amount of money.
Yeah, let's see if I,
So the variances, they gotta be registered at the registry too, right?
I think that's
Usually-
special permits that have to be registered, Joe. I
All
forget
of them
which.
have to be,
Yeah.
both.
Um,
But I really don't see how the zoning board could follow their policy and procedures, because they would have to be, if it's a variance request, a hardship. How could they possibly phrase that to make it eligible, to grant it? That's very convoluted.
mhm.
You know, you can't, I don't know how you can do a wink and a nod.
Well, they waived the building permit fees, right?
Well, that's easy, but I'm talking about really granting, having a hearing for the variance.
Mhm.
How can they, what does other towns, how do they meet that
Are you talking about the
qualification?
fees, Tilly?
No.
Oh, I'm
Talking
sorry,
about
I'm
Granting
sorry.
it,
That there's,
Oh,
Granting
granting
the-
the issue? Oh,
the variance.
again, the philosophy is the Dover Amendment allows a school or a church to be located in any district,
I understand. Dover
right?
Amendment.
So you could end up being in a single-family district. And the zoning code is written dimensionally that, you know, in that single-family district, it's imagining small lots with small buildings on them. And so the setbacks, the height, the number of stories are all written around, you know, residential properties. So now if you come along and put a school in there, it's, you know, I think you can look at it that it's unreasonable to apply the same dimensional restrictions to a much larger building just because it happens to be located in a residential district. And so it's not a question of hardship. You're not asking for the variance to be granted for hardship. You're asking for reasonableness. That's what the key.
All right, so what you're gonna ask for is a finding. You're not gonna ask for a special permit or,
Not a special permit, but technically, again, it's up to the building inspector who's sort of interpreting this. He calls it a variance, and so he suggests we go to the zoning board of appeals.
All right, so in terms of the fee, does the town handle that? 'Cause-
The selectmen waived as stated,
Okay.
they waived the building permit fee.
so do we go through you if it goes to that step to ask them for a waiver on this fee also?
Wasn't that already discussed with them?
I thought it was.
To my knowledge, they waived all fees.
Okay, so we're all set.
I remember that.
Okay.
I'll check the notes.
Okay.
All right. Do we need to, we can actually vote now because we have a quorum, so we can back up to approve the wetland flagging services.
Yes.
Okay.
Would you like to explain?
This is, there's a typo in the
Right, it should be number
Sec
6.
P, which is professional services supplement number 6. This has to do with the additional wetlands that were requested to be flagged by the Conservation Commission. So it involves the wetland specialist going back out, and then the surveyor having to go back out too to locate those flags on the plan. And in the case of one area, it's actually sort of off-site. It's that area across at Elm Street by the driveway and a little bit across Elm Street, where the water flows into right now, that we needed just the topography and all picked up there too, in addition to the wetlands flags. And then the other thing was, while they were out there also, one of the things that hadn't been done before was locating the location of test pits and borings on the surveys too. The geotech engineer had located them in a ballpark fashion on the plan, but now that we're going out to bid, and in a few cases it becomes a little more significant, we wanted it to be more precise than that, and recommend that the surveyor pick up those locations and again locate those on the site plan too. So that's what's included in this PSS number 6. It involves both the surveyor and the wetlands specialist.
And if I'm reading this correctly, because I don't have my glasses with me, I think it says we're talking about
Don't borrow mine.
8,000, yeah, you use mine all the time, huh?
8,520.
$8,520. Mike, I don't have one of the blank forms to sign. Can we sign the actual invoice and
Yes.
give you that?
Yes.
So, does anyone have any questions about this? Because if not, I'll make a motion that we approve payment of this 8,000.
I have a question.
Okay. Well, why don't we make the motion and then we'll
Yeah.
open up for discussion. $8,520.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I have a question on, does this fit within our budget that we had before?
Yes. We carried, in the main budget, not only with our budget, but also with the MSBA budget, there's a series of, because they're unknowns, there's a series of what's called designer reimbursables for other consultants. This is exactly what those items for.
And how much do we have left after this in that?
We haven't touched that, but we have roughly $201,000 in there. And to date, we've only invoiced 14,766, and we've not committed the full amount yet.
And projections, sees it being still
Once we get into
viable number?
once we get into the design, we get through the design phase, there's very few of these smaller ones. You'll get into geotech, there'll be a approval to extend the services of geotechnical engineer during the construction phase to verify the substrata and everything else, to make sure everything's where we thought it was gonna be and what it was gonna be during any blasting and the final building pad. You'll get one, which we have received from Carl's office already to review, which is from the hazardous material consultant. to witness and actually go into a part of the abatement of the building. He's the only one certified to do that. They'll have a monitoring person on site to verify the quantities that are being removed, because we'll pay against actual quantities and not guesses what we think is asbestos. There'll be a handful of others like that. Could be some additional testing. We'll have a materials testing and independent testing, which is actually a separate line item. So you're well covered. We're not gonna hit it all. We never do. We always put it in a little, not knowing, put in what we think we're gonna hit, but we've not hit it yet, so we'll have money left.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other
Confident
questions?
about it.
No? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. I will just pass this around, and
David does, I'm giving it Mike.
you guys can just sign it and send that over to Mike.
Did you just get that?
Did I
Did you send that out?
Which
thought
one?
I sent it out yesterday.
Yeah, it was in an email I sent out for distribution, it had everything in there.
I sent
One
it
with the
out
meeting minutes. it was
with the
all-
minutes, yes. It was the email with
At
the
least I
minutes.
sent it to you two had.
And I sent it out.
I saw it, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I got the minutes.
Yeah.
There were two things, there were several things attached to the minutes, actually. Not the minutes, yes, the
Agenda.
minutes. Michelle sent the agenda, so it was from me. I forwarded
You don't
everything.
actually have to sign
I want to
that.
say just a
not
day
an
or two
invoice,
ago. It was
you
over the
have to sign
weekend.
It was like Friday.
It's not an invoice.
Was it Friday?
It doesn't
I went out just before the
That
weekend.
actually doesn't even need to be signed, because that gets signed by David, that's not an invoice. That's to approve the extension of the contract.
Oh, it
We
is?
voted
Okay.
So.
So
he
we don't
has
even
the
have to sign
originals.
it?
You really don't even have to sign that.
Yeah, it's the
Okay.
authorization. Give it to
I'll keep it in my
Ellie's
notebook.
copy.
Yeah, that's
Anything with a
not
hole in it goes in my notebook.
That's not an invoice.
Okay. Great.
If we want to continue, Ally, with
Yes,
the.
I do.
We did have, as I say, a meeting with the building inspector, and then later the same day with the fire department too, just to summarize those. It went very well. Otherwise, as I said, he identified, the building inspector identified the need for, or perhaps the need for a zoning variance, but otherwise was pleased, I think, with what he saw in terms of the explanation of the code interpretations on the building, how the building was organized, and materials and sections. And he did want, and we did copy him later that same day with any previous reviews that have been done, like all of the MSBA reviews, that we got at each of the previous milestones, the commissioning report. I think even Chuck and Pat's review, he wanted to see those. So any other sort of professional peer reviews, he got copies of all those now. And he'll get, we'll copy him in the future too. And then he explained, like we understood, and I think like Jeff had mentioned at one of our meetings here, that once this goes into construction, it's under a category in the building code called controlled construction, where he relies a lot on us and the professionals involved. It's not quite like when a contractor is building a home and there's nobody else involved, and the building department has to go out and witness a lot of the construction. Here, we supply affidavits at the beginning and periodically through the whole process, not only us, but our engineers. And he knows that others are involved too, and he gets copies of all those reports and relies on them and so forth. He explained that process and shared the forms, which are state forms, basically, for those affidavits. And then later, as I said, we went to the fire department, met with the chief there, and went through, along with our engineers, because we got into sprinkler systems and fire alarm systems too there, went over some at this point, I guess you'd call them details almost, because the basic design has been done for a while from a conceptual point of view on those systems. And it was, again, productive meeting. There were a few options where, our engineers could say we could do it this way, and the chief made decisions, and we're able to move along now and put the specifications together and kinds of devices they want, the locations of hose outlets and connections, and annunciator panels for the fire department, and things like that. So again, it was a productive meeting, timely meeting for us and our engineers to finish the plans and specs. And I'm trying to recall, I don't think there was any follow-on there that was needed. We took care of everything pretty much at that meeting. But again, there will be future submittals. For instance, the sprinkler system in the building has to be reviewed not only by us and our engineers when the contractor is on board and prepares that submittal, but has to be reviewed by the fire department too, before it can start installation.
Which always
Is that the
tends to.
State Department,
No, it's
No, it's
local.
local.
local?
He
Local
may
reviews
rely
that,
on
yeah.
it. We've had some jurisdictions, and when we met with the chief at the beginning, he actually did bring in the state fire marshal inspector to sit within the meeting and review with us. So he may rely on, they have those relationships, but he may not. It depends on workload and where they sit at the time. But- And as Carl said, during the final review, and even once construction started and they're reviewing the design plans for the sprinkler system, it's not unusual to have additional requirements submitted by the fire department at that time, because things have changed. We accommodate for those things. We expect there'll be some element of some late changes, so we tend to include those things.
You know, I should mention, we were,
They do happen.
So the
Um,
building committee, though, could they ask for a state review?
It really does, it does fall on the local
Yeah.
jurisdiction.
Oh, completely.
It does, it's on him completely, his office.
I was going to mention, it's important for us to catch as many things as we can now with particularly the fire department, because you may recall in that MSBA budget form, there's a line item, there's sort of a subtotal rather for the total project costs, and then below that there are contingencies and another total down there. And the MSBA warns, you may not get everything, all those contingency, in other words, change orders, may not all be eligible for reimbursement. But if they were, they show you what the maximum might be. They do evaluate all those changes through the course of the project. I think they do it quarterly, and they put them into categories, and they're basically 4 categories. And the reason I mention this is one of the categories is third-party directed scope changes. There are sort of omissions. If we left something off the plans, there should have been, whatever, 2 doors in this room, and, for some reason it got left off the plans and we add it by change order. That's an omission. That goes into one category. If we run into unforeseen conditions, that's a second category. If you direct us to add something to the work,
The scope change,
that's owner-directed scope change. If the fire department directs us to add something to the work, that's a
Right.
third-party directed scope changes. And right now, as of this designer roundtable I was just at, Mary Piketty, you might remember from the MSBA, who sort of oversees a lot of this, says those last 2 categories are automatically ineligible for reimbursement.
Right.
So we want to
So
know
if the
any
fire
changes ahead
department,
of
right,
time.
came through at the end and said, I think we need another exit sign there, we'd
Yeah.
put it in, but
But we're paying
it
for
would be
it.
ineligible. Whereas if we got that exit sign on the plan now,
Right.
it would be eligible for
So
reimbursement.
that's why we keep sending him the
And
drawings.
if we just said,
keep
well, wait a
having
minute,
meetings
Mary,
with
what
him.
if we just considered an architect omission? Then it might be considered eligible for reimbursement.
Right,
She said,
that's a good point.
We ought to look into that. So maybe by the time this project gets reviewed, they might loosen up on that requirement,
I'm
but
sure our
Is that
fire
made-
department's more on the ball than that.
And is that made very clear to the fire department?
It was discussed
you
in
know,
the early
Rob,
phases.
with every fire department, we try to be as conscientious as we can, as thorough as we can, and even get them to sign off on things. But there's still nothing that prevents them on that,
know.
month before opening when they walk through and say,
Yeah.
geez, I thought we needed another sprinkler head here.
Sure.
Because it's hard to
Ooh.
visualize everything,
Yeah.
condition
All the time.
in advance.
Yeah.
And also,
Or,
not-
another fire extinguisher here or something.
And it happens quite a bit too. Then I'm not saying it's happening here, and I certainly don't know anything about what's happening in town. But there are times when administrations within the fire department, when they change, the chief leaves, a new
Right.
lieutenant gets promoted, or a new lieutenant comes in,
Yeah.
it changes people's mindset. So they
So
look at
we
things a
are
little different. We
actually
do
gonna
the
be
best we
getting
can
you-
up front, but
Fire
you
chief,
know,
correct?
No,
Something
the police
happens.
chief.
What's the new police chief?
Yeah.
But he's kind of an old soul.
We're good for
So-
3 years with the fire chief.
we'll be good then.
Good.
He's
That's what we
nice
want.
guy, too.
So-
So
The neighbor.
did you explain the building inspector, the independent third person?
That was
You
planning to be hired by the committee, you mean? Yes, we mentioned that too. Yeah, yeah.
Now, does an RFP go out for that?
Yes.
That's
We're
independent
getting-
of
Oh, we're
his
working on
review,
now.
yeah.
We're getting prices hopefully getting prices from a couple of firms right now. And I've identified a third firm who's interested in doing the work too, so they've seen the scope of work, and as it was discussed at the last building committee meeting, Mike's office produced that, sent that out to a few engineers, and we're waiting to hear back on that stuff.
So they do the building,
Mike's stuff is the site work.
Oh, I'm
there
talking
is-
about the building.
There isn't a third-party review done on
There's
the building as a
commissioning
whole.
agent.
There's a
Structural.
commissioning agent.
And there's a structural coming up.
Structural, wouldn't it
That's
be?
the last
We're
item.
gonna-
that's
the
on the
last item
agenda.
here.
That's what
coming
I
up.
thought.
Yeah.
Yes, that's coming up too.
And I
Sorry.
have, that was emailed around as well, I hope, it was sent on.
I got it.
Yeah, that we saw. And
I
that,
wonder
that
if maybe
I
that's
didn't
what I
get it.
sent and not the other one.
You got this?
yeah. from
I got
That's
the
it.
Dunbar's
agenda,
office.
but I didn't get that.
They've-
What is that, one page?
Yeah.
No, that's the one that was attached with the minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there was a checklist too, right?
Yes, there were 3 pieces to it, right?
Oh, I'll go
That
back
showed,
and look again.
showed the
but I
scope, I
didn't see
thought,
that.
too.
Yeah.
There was a checklist.
Yeah, I
There
probably
is.
didn't print it off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't print it off.
Yeah,
I
there-
did.
I've seen it
George
100
has it,
times.
yeah.
Yeah,
I knew what it was.
Yeah, he's done it a lot, so he
right.
has a checklist.
Okay,
Well, one more
Is there anything
question, if I
else? Yeah.
may.
about the fire?
About, no, about this, this is the third.
We didn't get there yet, Tilly.
Oh,
That's further down
all
the
right.
agenda. We'll come
Okay.
back and maybe he'll answer your question before you, write it
Okay,
down
yeah.
so you don't forget.
I have it.
Okay. Okay, so then,
So I think that's it.
for that,
Yes.
right. Now we have, the Conservation Commission meeting has been rescheduled
June
for
20th.
June 20th.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that you have used this time to get in the items that they needed.
Well, there's sort of 2 activities happening. One,
Right.
relative to the amendment you just approved was, getting the flags, wetland flags picked up and on the survey and resubmitted. But at the same time, the Conservation Commission has given our plans to a third-party reviewer, and they're still waiting for, as I understand it, I don't know if we checked in today, but they're still waiting for, those comments to come back.
Correct.
And so in essence, it would have been hard to have a productive meeting in the absence of those comments back from the third-party reviewer.
Right.
But the real reason they postponed the meeting was they couldn't get a quorum on that evening, May 23rd. So, but in our own scheduling, we had anticipated the meeting being continued to June in any event. So in the big picture, it doesn't change at least what we anticipated as the schedule for review. And we'll certainly, stay in touch with them and hopefully get the comments back as early as possible so that we can respond to them, in advance or well in advance of the June 20th meeting to make that a productive meeting and perhaps even a meeting that the hearing could close on.
Okay.
I noticed that in that contract that BSC left out, reviewing the local erosion and stormwater control bylaw.
I'm not sure which one you're referring to, George.
BSC's scope of work that they're doing for the Conservation Commission. They're not working for us, they're working for the Conservation Commission, so George.
I did send a note to Steve,
Okay.
and he seemed to think it would be obvious that they were gonna review that,
You would think.
but it's not in the scope of work, so.
Yeah.
Good pickup.
Yeah, it is. I'll follow up. I'll call Steve to make sure also.
Are these the ones for the work that we want done, or the
No,
conservation?
No,
Conservation
conservation. Okay. And now we're gonna discuss the access driveway.
Right, right. The secondary access drive. We want to be careful how we describe this because I think
What's the name du jour again?
secondary access drive,
They're very.
as
very
opposed to
cute.
emergency access drive, even though we know the reality is it would only be used in emergencies, the fact of calling it that, I think, establish the standards in people's minds as to what it should be or could be, I guess. And it is true that, if it has value, then we'd like it to work all the time. and be accessible and usable all the time. And now that we've submitted it and reviewed it a little closer and all, some people have questioned, can you really plow this thing and maintain it year round in a snowstorm? Because it is in places in a bowl, and the bowl is limited in width to 25 feet, and it's got stone walls, and probably truly the only way to get snow out of there would be with a front end loader in places. If we are following the letter of the law and we're not going to plow onto other people's properties or drain onto other people's properties and need to contain it there, to really build it as a plowable road with the right kind of drainage, it probably would take a front end loader to get snow out of certain parts of it. And that was brought out in our site walk with a couple members of the Conservation Commission who had started to look at it themselves, and Steve, the agent, who were concerned about that. And we discussed this briefly at our last building committee meeting, and you asked us to think about what are options there. And we went back to our landscape architects, civil engineers, and asked, what are the options there? And they think that it is near impossible to do even if we could handle the drainage, a full paved road with that grading there at the right width and have place to store snow. It's not wide enough, and it's graded in such a way that you would need something special. The other option, sort of other extreme, is to say, well, why pave any of it then? Why don't we just put gravel down, compact it, and utilize it? It would actually lessen the runoff to not have any pavement there. The reason we put gravel, some pavement, remember, was to help with plowing, so that when you're plowing, and if Peter were here, he could explain it better than I. But, and you drop the blade down, you start scraping away the surface each snowstorm. Once you get down to bare gravel, it might require a lot of maintenance each season to reconstruct the road, recompact it, and having the pavement there was a little bit of a guide that you wouldn't scrape away the gravel, and it provided a secondary benefit of being a pedestrian path that you could walk on, and plow that fairly easily, obviously. And the drainage part of it probably would be improved, as I said, if we had no pavement. Just put in good draining material, compacted, the gravel on top of it, get large aggregate so water would still go through it, but you could compact it well enough to drive on it, and for what, maybe 360 days a year, it's usable and plowable. Maybe there's a couple days where you can't clear it, it might take a little work in the spring to, if it were all gravel, to, as I say, to reconstruct it somewhat, if it did get scraped away by some plowing activities. So those are the real options that they thought of, is leave it as is and accept the trade-off, or take away the pavement. If you probably save a little money in the pavement, but it might improve the drainage somewhat too, that we wouldn't get quite as much runoff, because right at the bottom of that, it is sloping towards the street, and the sides of it can only pick up so much. There might still be some that tends to flow downhill there, that we'd have to do something a little more, in terms of underground structures or something at the very end there to pick up that, to ensure that it doesn't go onto the street and across the street. So there's some drainage value, you might say, in not paving it. There's some usability value in paving it for both pedestrians and bikes, we should mention too, bicycles.
I know that the civil or the LA aren't here. Have you had any discussion about the infiltration rate of, and maybe it's part of what you guys are thinking about as gravel and what I'm thinking about as a gravel drive? Because when I think of a gravel drive, and the best metaphor I can think of those are the ones that are the roads in Vermont.
Yes, yeah.
So they have really poor infiltration. There's not a lot of difference between that and a paved surface. And so I'm not sure
Well,
what
they
they're
described
thinking.
something with larger stone,
Yeah.
so they get more voids that
So it's,
water can
has
get
more,
through.
okay.
But it's smooth enough you can drive on and you can compact. And they think it can work, from a drainage point of view, that, the water will infiltrate.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So how many layers would they use before they put that heavy stone in?
Probably, I'm not quite sure. It may be like the top foot is that material, but below it is good draining material still. But it's the top that might be the slightly more expensive stone, closer to crushed stone that has more voids in it. It's still called gravel, though. It's just a different, what do you call it? Gradation in the top layer.
Can you ride a bike on it?
Yes. Yeah.
And not that,
And you can walk on. It's not like you're going to trip
It's not
on it or
gravel, it's
anything.
not like.
Could someone push a
It's not
carriage?
soft. It's not soft. It's well compacted.
Is it smooth enough that someone could go up there with a baby carriage?
Probably.
Ride a bike.
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
is that black stuff that,
No, it's not coal packets.
No.
No,
No,
it's
it has
not
no
that
tar
black
in it.
stuff.
No.
It sounds like it's,
No oil in it.
it sounds like they have a particular spec that they're thinking of with a certain gradation.
Yeah.
We talked
yeah.
about it
I
during.
mean, it still has the vulnerability to getting plowed away, to getting scraped away.
Sure.
That's the one
But is
drawback.
that like one bad winter, or is that several years of bad winters?
Well, it doesn't even necessarily have to be bad, Carrie. It's how many times you plow it, I
That's
guess.
what I
You know,
mean,
even if
like,
you got a couple inches of snow, if you plow it, you could scrape away some of the surface. You know, if you got 2 feet, you still might just
Right.
scrape it once, as you got 3 inches, you know.
Still gotta plow.
Yeah.
So we have to come up with an option, what we think is best for this.
Did you talk to Peter about this?
We haven't yet. We thought he'd be here as part of the committee to
The-
weigh in,
I
but
think the issue, it really is like, a while ago you had mentioned like a retaining wall on that side where the drainage would come down and the erosion. So that retaining wall will stop the water flow from running down this excess road or excess
We're
path.
talking about
There isn't a
retaining.
retaining
No,
wall.
retaining.
not related to this path, Tilly.
It's nowhere near this.
No,
No.
no.
The
No.
problem is how deep you're gonna need it. I mean, this is a wet area. You're gonna put these stones on it, and they're gonna sink. They're gonna eventually, sink, and they'll be
No,
required to replace them again, or
No, I don't think that's the issue, because we've done a couple test pits in the vicinity of the drive, so they know what the material is, at least in that portion of it, and it looks fairly consistent there. So they know what's underneath it, and there's not high groundwater or anything there.
nothing.
That's not the
Tilly,
issue.
I don't think he's talking about laying just stone. It's a compost
No,
of
it's-
stone and
Something will
gravel,
be
or all
underneath it,
stone?
yeah.
It has fines in it still, it's still gravel.
Yeah.
And remember, we're running a water line down there, so we're doing the
Have to dig it up
excavation
anyways.
anyway.
Right.
It's sort of now talking about what backfill do we put in,
Right.
and what surface do we put on.
I
Tilly,
think
what-
the calculations would have to be based on how many layers, how thick it'll be. Each layer that you're gonna put down, I think, because if the stones aren't thick enough, you're just gonna get stones settling into whatever's underneath.
No,
Well, they'll be able
they
to-
compact it in layers.
I think the
They'll be able to get it.
calculations will be less than putting down a 4 or 6 foot asphalt pavement.
Right.
Right, I mean, that's really what we need to be deciding. Do we still want some asphalt? I guess I would like to have Peter weigh in on this kind of
Really what's gonna
conversation.
Yeah, I'd like to know what
Also,
I'd like
yeah.
to know what he has to say about it. And I mean, I think that I mean, the pavement's nice because it's easier to walk up, it's easier to ride up, for mothers with their kids and kids to go up. There is the issue of the drainage at the bottom, which you'd have to take care of. I don't think we'd want anything, that would cause
Right.
water, major water coming down onto Elm Street. Not at all. So that has to be taken care of. I'd like to hear from Peter because, you know, it's a maintenance issue and a construction issue. If you build it right the first time, then your maintenance is less from then on.
Excuse me.
If you build it, but if the maintenance isn't going to be all that much, and Peter thinks that it's going to be fine, then that's, you know, that would be fine. I just don't know the answers to those.
It might be moot what Peter thinks anyhow, if Concom
Yeah.
doesn't go along with paving that road.
Well, yeah, I mean, it has to-
they had reservations on the sidewalk, so.
They had reservations about paving it? For what reasons?
Well, they're worried about the
So we're gonna
runoff coming
just-
out from
They
the
made
side.
they made it, at least my interpretation was, Rob, it was more about just the usability of it as a emergency drive. You know, could it be plowed every day, all the time? You know, could it always be passable? It didn't have so much to do with the drainage, it had to do with
Right.
snow plowing.
That's my understanding.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I don't know.
If, just to, I think the assumption, I think it's a fair assumption to make that the section will take into account their test pit geotechnical information and address all of those concerns you're talking about. I know that's a detail that I'll look at pretty close, but if it's just gravel, I guess my concern is, and I don't sit behind the plows, but I can be pretty well assured that there's going to be maintenance every year with it. And that's a concern of mine with regards to the size of this project and all the maintenance that's getting associated with this project, with porous pavement, with these underground drainage structures, and the reality of the town and the town's budget, and if there's a way to minimize the long-term impacts, I would,
That's why we thought pavement was a good idea.
that's,
Right.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good statement.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're talking about the whole site and infiltration.
Left mine in the car.
'Cause we don't have the room to put above-ground water storage.
No, but he's talking about I mean, at least from what I interpreted.
He just
when I-
mentioned infiltration.
Yeah, no, but, you know, there's a number of things that are gonna cause the town to have maintenance,
We have infiltration
requirements.
chambers elsewhere on the project.
And,
Right.
and we just have to keep that in mind so we don't keep on adding more and more. So if we have an option to create something that's not gonna be a maintenance issue, then maybe we should think about that at least, and not add yet another piece onto it, because there are gonna be maintenance issues on anything in the
Well,
school.
flooding is a maintenance issue too. So, I mean, if we.
Well, yeah, but, I mean, I have confidence that they would be able to take care of it, the water, at the end of the road, or at the end of this little pathway, so that it doesn't spill out onto Elm Street, because, I mean, that was my statement, if you
As
can't
long
do
as
that,
it-
then forget it, you know.
As long as there's maintenance.
not gonna do that.
I mean, there's gonna be an O&M plan, and if the
Right.
the maintenance plan isn't followed,
Yeah.
then what you have down the end of the drive is gonna fail too, and you're gonna have more runoff.
Well, it's an amount of degree we're talking here.
And it's also being able to work with the Elm Street project to make sure it all meshes together. I mean, it has to be all one project.
I don't think there's a
Well, then it-
guarantee paving it either, that you're not gonna have maintenance. Because
That's why I
you've
said
got
degree.
such a wet area that the water's gonna run underneath the pavement and buckle it up. I mean, am I wrong about that? Or?
You're right, the trade-off, I think, has been summarized pretty good, is if we pave it, we may need some drainage structures at the bottom. If we don't pave it, you got maintenance of the gravel surface
Yeah.
every year,
So
as
it's
opposed to
tough.
maintenance of a drainage structure
Right.
that needs to be pumped out or cleaned out regularly.
And I think that's why having Peter here
Yeah.
to lend his.
I mean, my thought is, my
Opinion.
Come back and.
my
Yeah.
guess, I mean, it'd be good, I wanna hear Peter's,
Yeah.
input, but my guess is that, at least in a maintenance sense, the maintenance of maintaining the road, or this pathway out of gravel is gonna be more than maintaining, a catch basin, on a yearly basis. So I don't think that, I just think that's what it's gonna come out. I do wanna hear from Peter, though, on that, too, so, I mean, I think I'm leaning towards what you're thinking in doing a pavement, and I have confidence that they can design it so that it's not gonna crumble underneath, or, in either case, so, but,
I also, I mean, I automatically think about not just the bikes, but mothers, fathers going up there with carriages and
Yeah.
things like that to meet the kids, and
Right.
I think it's messy.
well, you get a
know,
pothole,
Yeah.
I
You
think
know.
I think there's a lot to that also. I think I think you want to encourage people to walk and ride
Right.
bikes as much as possible and the sidewalk system
That's
throughout
how
the
wide?
town. And,
Has it been changed to 6 feet?
I'm not sure, but I think, encouraging.
That's what's on the plan right now, George.
Is it
Those
Encouraging.
calculations weren't sent to the Concom, right?
They were, with
Not the meeting I went to.
6-foot pavement, 3-foot gravel on either side, so it was 12-foot wide.
Not the original Concom meeting. The calculations were turned in that meeting.
Yeah,
For 4-foot pavement.
it might be a discrepancy between the landscape drawings and the civil then.
Well, that wasn't decided until after the Concom hearing where Dave Conway turned in the calculations. Here are the calculations
4-foot of pavement.
for 4-foot pavement. So now we're gonna increase the calculations.
It might then, if that's what it was based on.
I'm not sure the Concom's gonna be very happy about that.
But what I was saying was that to encourage walking and physical activity and everything that the town has been talking about in that regard, and there's no perfect solution, George. And I believe me, if I had a magic wand, I'd resolve it that way. But I think people walking in the winter and on rainy days will do much better on a surface that can be plowed down to something versus, and then, versus gravel or whatever
Well,
the spec is.
don't you think that the people would have enough intelligence to walk on the original driveway entrance if the weather is bad, if they can't ride their bikes or
But it's
push
not
the
a matter of
carriages?
location.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
mean,
if they're
you
from that
know-
end of town,
It's a significant difference, Tilly.
right,
I mean,
it's
I mean,
another-
long way.
the
If you're
other
going to
piece-
meet your
It's probably a
kids.
half-mile difference.
Yeah, the other piece to keep in mind is that Georgetown has embarked on this bike path and walking path that comes very close to the intersection of Elm, Nelson Street, and Central. So they will be coming down that in
The old railroad right away.
the old railroad right away,
Yeah.
and there's going to be a connection between the Elm Street project and this and the bike path, which will allow people to come right in. So it makes perfect sense to have this path right here because it'd be perfect. People could go from anywhere in town and stay off the road, which is a big thing
Right.
with
Go
kids.
right to school.
It's
So
great.
the trail will be plowed?
We have, the trail will be paved, and we haven't worked out if it's gonna be plowed or not. We'll work that out. I'm sure that if it connects into schools, then we'll probably end up having to do something like that.
Well, the Concom isn't meeting until the 20th.
We don't know yet.
So, I don't know how we can make a decision if like I said, the Concom could make this moot anyhow. They could condition it to say, we don't want pavement. So, I don't know why we have to take a vote now. And then they're not gonna care about,
Discussion.
access by the children or
It's just a vote.
whether you can drive a baby carriage. They're looking at the stormwater erosion and control bylaw. They're looking at runoff issues. And,
Right.
I don't see that.
But I think on the same note, I think we should be going into Concom with what we want, and if it's not correct, then we should correct that. So, and then let the decision and the conversations begin. So,
All right, then why don't we just table this until our next meeting, and I will reach out to Peter to tell him, that,
Well, we're gonna have a
We would like
conversation
to-
with Peter anyhow, the consultants, and
that's
we'll have
good,
a conversation with Peter anyhow.
before then.
So
We
we
wanna
talk about real
contact him
technical
offline.
specs
Yeah.
and-
Yeah.
Maybe Peter could be at the Concom meeting.
We're gonna ask him.
Yep. All right, and then,
Thanks.
we've already discussed, the
No.
peer review, that's the one that you have to do,
Yeah,
yeah.
your agenda says the DRA is currently soliciting, that should read
Sure.
OPM.
Right.
On your behalf, we solicited proposals, we didn't because it is an independent peer review of the designer. We didn't want the designer going out and
Right.
Picking our
providing.
friends.
Yeah.
So we reviewed a number of them, and the one that we're recommending to you was sent to you. They're all within the same price and all the rest of that.
This is, no,
This is
That's
for
it,
DM
yes.
Berg Consultants. This is the one that Illy, I'm waiting for her question
Is this
on.
Dave Berg?
Huh? That's
Dave
all right.
Berg.
Is this Dave?
Yes.
We've all done a fair amount of work with them, and they do this a great deal of this peer review. And this is their scope of work says, this is an independent review. An independent structural engineering review performed in accordance with Massachusetts State Building Code 8th edition, section 105.9 for a 98,000 square foot new school for a lump sum fee of $3,600. We have gotten prices on this anywhere from $3,000, not on this job, but on previous projects, from $3,000 all the way up to $7,000, $8,000, $9,000. And they do a very good job. That's somebody we highly recommend. We're asking for your approval to move forward based on that. And Tilly's got a question.
the last sentence in this thing is special conditions. And basically, they're not responsible for anything.
What they're saying is they're not responsible, they're not supplanting or joining with a structural engineer of record for his or her professional responsibility. What they're saying is they're absolutely 100% correct, that they are not responsible for the structural design of the building. They're reviewing the calculations and identifying to us, the owner, any concerns they have with the engineering calculations. So what that does is gives you the confidence that we're reviewing it, we'll identify their concerns back to their consultant, back to DRA's consultant, to make sure that those things are either picked up or addressed to their satisfaction and ours as a owner satisfaction. But they're not designing the building. They'll tell you that up front, and we don't want them to.
That's right.
Does this also include, maybe they just need the words, but life and safety review?
No, this
No,
is
this is
only the
just structural.
structure of the building.
This is required by the state.
So who does the
Pretty
life and
straightforward.
safety?
Life safety reviews are done for as far as life safety is much, we review with the building inspector. They're also reviewed with the fire department. Fire department is particularly concerned with safety issues, so they do their review and provide comments back to the design team as well. But a peer review is traditionally not done on life safety. The commissioning agent looks at the mechanical elements of the building, as well as the envelope, the skin of the building for energy conservation and all of that as well. So you're getting a
We
number
did
of
have a
people.
independent code consultant.
Yeah, and as Carl says, there is a code consultant that works on their team to review the code against them. So you're getting it from a lot of parts and pieces. This is actually no longer required by the code. This is required by the MSBA.
And so it's been budgeted.
Yes, we budgeted anyhow. We always do, but it's no longer required by the code. The MSBA requires it because they feel that they'd like to have that extra level of protection.
So when they're on board, then the building inspector doesn't have to do any other inspections?
On the structural engineering part of it, they only review the
structural
structural
engineering.
engineering department. He'll get a copy of their review as well.
I see.
He'll get a copy of everybody's peer review. Whether he wants them or not, we're gonna send them to him.
Okay.
We want them to see it.
The requirement of this by code is at certain levels, it's not required. At certain levels, it is.
Thank you.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, so you're looking for a vote to approve hiring DM Berg.
Right.
Okay.
And this has to be signed by the owner. So this, I'm assuming, is gonna go on to the board of selectmen as they have for other ones that
Okay.
they've signed.
Is this all the way? I mean, I no, but I know these guys are excellent. They're very
Do
good.
we need to vote tonight?
I think we should. I mean, if it's needed, I'm ready to vote yes for it. so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a requirement of the MSBA submission.
That's right.
Okay, so would anyone like to make a motion that we approve hiring DM Berg as our independent structural peer reviewer?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right.
You will have going
questions
for,
about-
if I could just finish, Rob, 1 second. For peer reviews, you will have one, not a peer review, but for additional hazardous material work. We'll bring it to you at your next meeting. We got a little late, so we didn't get it out to you in time, but to give you a heads up, it's from Smith and Wessel, who is already under contract with Carl to do abatement work. Again, they've done a ton of work. We've all worked with them. They're an excellent firm. They're going to do some additional testing in the building to prepare the final documents. and then they've given us a proposal that you won't have to vote on now, we won't vote on until you award a contract, it's for them to actually do the monitoring during the abatement. But that's coming as well, we talked about that, so I'll get that paperwork out to you well in advance of the next meeting, so you can review that, we can discuss it.
Okay. One other thing that I'd like to bring up. How many of you would be interested in a site walk before the next meeting?
For purpose.
For your viewing
I would.
pleasure.
I would.
To actually walk through the site with,
I wouldn't mind,
think
because I
Carl
couldn't make
can.
it to the last
The
one.
Yeah, I
building
would like
corners
to.
are staked out if they're
Right,
still
everything's
there.
all set up,
Yeah.
and what we were thinking, if there were enough people, Courtney said she would organize getting, I think, one of the engineers,
When do you think that they would?
someone,
have
or
it?
just you guys to walk?
Handle it.
Okay, we're happy with that, but someone who could actually walk through the site and show you the location of the
When
building,
when
the
are we thinking of
wings.
having it? Because
Well-
daytimes during the week are out. for
No,
me,
we
so.
were thinking of before the next meeting,
Like
like maybe going at
6.
6 and then coming here for the meeting.
Mosquitoes
Oh, right
around.
before
Exactly, bring
Yeah.
your mosquito net, but
Yes.
we'll keep moving.
So that's June 18th.
The next meeting is June
Yeah,
18th.
It's officially the
Tick season 2?
National Bird.
How
of
about if I
Georgetown,
do this?
Oxford, and
I'll put it
Steele.
out in an email, and that gives you all a chance to look at your calendars and see if you'd like to do that. And if that date doesn't work, I mean, Carl, I'm sure would be happy to do it another night. Our next meeting is June 18th, so we were thinking maybe just before that. But if that date isn't gonna work, then we'll pick an alternative date.
And you'll meet at the Pembroke?
We'd meet right in the back of Pembroke, and I'm telling you, it's worth doing. I just learned so much. It was so nice to stand there and have Carl say, "And this is what you'll be looking at from the library." And I went, "Wow!" It was really wonderful.
Are all the
It
corners?
was.
All the corners are located.
Yeah, the basic ones of the T-shaped building, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. We'll tentatively schedule it for the next meeting. Have you done that with someone, or have you read it?
I'm pretty sure I've got a real good handle on it.
You do. Good.
Probably walking
Well, I
around.
know some of the
Can you
flags
do it
weren't
for
there.
Brady when he's
It's
not
only
gonna be able to
because I
make it?
know some of the flags weren't there, so I didn't know
Rob can
how much
do the next
was
tour
there.
if anyone can't.
Yeah, that's true too.
Please sign that up.
All right, so Rob, you had a couple of,
I just
You
had
had
one
something?
question. I wanted to keep an open mind about the gravel drive, and is it, the question that's coming up for me right now is the issue of how the perk rate and compaction and erosion and maintenance, and could the geotech, because this is his bailiwick, could the geotech take the spec or the detail section that you all are talking about and review it and comment specifically as to what kind of, because he'll be able to calculate the weight of the plow trucks, of if there was a fire truck, and give us the best professional sense of what kind of damage is going to happen to this road from that. He may say this thing is like asphalt and it's not going to do anything, or he may say no, you got a lot of stuff.
And the other
Quick
piece of
memo,
that, though,
quick email, something like that.
the other piece that if they could answer is, and I just dawned on me that you're having the pavement, but then you're having gravel on either side,
Yeah.
and have them verify if that isn't where the water is perking back in, because I know that with the bike trail that we've been investigating, I mean, this is such a narrow path, and the percolation can happen at the sides and still get down into the ground where it would have anyways, and the good thing is that people tend to stay on a path and not crush down or do anything on the gravels on the side, so that will continue to perk. Whereas as a gravel path itself can get beaten down and get infiltration stuff and get clogged up and so on and so forth. So it may actually even be better in the long run, and you may find if you can slope it correctly, either to one side or crown it, whatever you want to do. It might actually work better, and the amount of water coming off the site might be really low.
But I could see those rocks just going to the side, as the weight of the trucks or the
No, they can build it. If
Will
that's
it-
the case, then
No?
it's not like, yeah, I mean, it's not like going over a birthday cake where you squirt out the middle stuff. It's,
No,
you know,
I mean,
they,
it goes down. The rocks would, press
Press.
down and then you
You do have the
get that
potential of
overspill.
developing ruts, right,
Yeah.
if there were a lot of traffic, but there's not gonna be a lot of traffic on this
Yeah.
road, hopefully, right?
hopefully the
If it's
design is
emergency.
such that it's gonna hold itself together.
Just to plow
If
a
it
couple
isn't,
times a
you and I
year.
would both go after him and say, what did you do?
You know,
But that's a
that
good
every
point. We
calculation
can get
developed,
their opinion, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know, every calculation developed under the Mass Stormwater Standards is wrong, right?
Wrong, right?
Wrong.
Is it?
They're not updated.
They're using 1960
Oh, are they?
rainfall data. Everything has been designed in Georgetown.
Really? Well,
What,
forget
what,
safety
what,
factors.
we've had 500-year storms or something?
In 20 years.
All right, we have one more item, which is to approve the minutes. Please, if we could all, here they are. All right, I'd like to approve the minutes of May 7th, 2013.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the minutes? Great. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstained? Okay, motion carries. So that takes care of the minutes, and I believe that's it. Chuck, any other last minutes?
Nope, you hit them all. Thank you.
Perfect. It's
Right on.
only 8:30. We've done 2 meetings
Beautiful.
tonight.
Not even a broad game on it.
You missed the first meeting. All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
You know, motion, who made a motion to adjourn? Everybody?
Second.
So moved.
Okay.
Is that backwards?
Yes, it was.
I
It was my
gotcha.
dyslexia again.